The greatly feared round 17 minor buy round is upon us, and I hope you are ready. Look, two things you got to be trying to do this week. One, get the right players, and two, get enough of them. A lot of you guys don't have 17, and yeah, I'm looking right at you. So let's jump into this. Look, first group here, our buys for the week. These are pretty straightforward options here. Jack DeBellin, look, he was out for a couple of weeks. He had that week off due to concussion. Then he had the buy round 16. He's back round 17. Every reason that he was a good option before is true again. And he's just looking like one of those guys who's going to average 60 plus through the year. So hot option, 823K. Look, it's not cheap, but you might have some money lying around. So make the move. Next guy here is Tohu Harris. Tohu's much cheaper at the same position there. So 704K. The Warriors have some nice buys to finish things out, which is a big positive there. And look, Tohu, he's been scoring around that 60 average for the year. So if you can rely on him for a 60 average at 704K, that's fantastic. There's just nothing controversial about it. He's a hot option. Third guy here is a bit more spicy. So Harry Grant, we've been talking a lot about Origin guys in terms of do you hold them or do you sell them? Harry Grant was one I've personally held through the Origin period. It was looking pretty bad for a while there, but everyone's forgetting his last start in round 15 before round 16 there. Harry Grant posted a 91-point game. Now, that's colossal. When we look at the hooker position, there's a lot of nice little cheapy sort of guys there, like Simpkins there, Brandon Hands is there. Turpin's not that cheap anymore, but he was cheap and he's there. If you got one of these guys, Hands and Simpkin are both playing round 19. So if you were to get a guy like Harry Grant alongside one of them, not a bad option. Harry Grant's probably that top hooker for the rest of the year. The question is whether you like him now. So for me, Harry Grant, his fixtures aren't great. He's got Penrith next week. He's got a softer game this week. Penrith next week, which is a bit tricky. Then round 19, he misses for Origin after that. But no, I don't mind him as a buy. Look, 758K is about 100K off his starting price. And he's just the top averaging hooker in the comp. So if you can make that move, it's not a bad move, especially when you're low on trades. Next guy here, Matty Tomoko, and a little typo there. It's 516K is actually his price. That is cheap. That is cheap. And it's still about 40K above what he started the year at. But for Matty Tomoko, you could have been paying in the 600s for him a little while ago. He had a couple of quiet games. He's come off 2 games in a row where he's gone 40 plus with no attacking stats though. So it looks like he's back. Look, 516K for a center. If you've got Connolly Lemuelu and you're moving him on, we're going to talk about him in a bit. Matt Tomoko is a guy that I'm pretty happy with as an option to buy. He plays round 19. He misses round 20. Round 20 isn't that tricky. And by round 20, you're bringing in those keepers as well. So I wouldn't be too fussed about that. Look, Matty Tomoko, great option, very good price, big pod for you there. Last guy here is Joey Tarpanay. And look, same buys, obviously on the Raiders as well. For Joey Tarpanay, 708K, we talk about him a lot. Look, his minutes have been on the increase. That's what I'm going to point out here. It's been mostly between about 60 and 75 minutes for the last month of footy. Now, that's going to translate to points pretty reliably. Don't worry too much about the individual scores. They have mostly been good, but the minutes are what convert for a guy like Joey Tarpanay. Because the more he's on the field, he just makes tackles, makes runs, and make offloads. It's not any more complicated than that. When his minutes increase, his scores do too. 708K is probably about as cheap as you're going to get him this year. Could drop a little here and there, but I like that option. Next group here, the watch list. So this is a bit of a new segment, and we haven't done this previously. I'm springing this one up, and when Biz gets back, I think it's next week, potentially the week after. He's just settling into New York right now. I'll throw this at him too. But these are the guys we're watching at the moment. So the ones who they're not a buy right now. They're not maybe not a sell right now either. They're just ones where there's a couple of things need to happen there before we can bring them in. So first one here is Cam Murray, and he is the captain of the watch list team. And look, the reason he's up there is his price, 667K. And we're talking about Harry Grant being a buy. Murray would be a buy too if South didn't have such bad buys coming up. So Cam Murray will play this week, probably backing up from Origin. He'll play next week, almost certainly. He'll miss round 19, and then he'll miss round 20 as well. So round 19, he'll miss the State of Origin. Round 20, the Bunnies will not play a game that week because they have a bye. So for me, he plays 2, then he misses 2. He's going to drop money in that time as well. Wait a month, and get Cam Murray for 620k. That is the most cut price cheapy sort of keeper you can get down the stretch. If you make space for Cam Murray in your team, your team's gonna look stacked. Like you could turn, I don't know, let's say you're holding Jacob Preston, for example, through this period. You can turn Preston to Murray and have money to spare probably at that point. So yeah, no, that's pretty exciting. Ryan Madison's the next guy here. Look, he dropped a bunch of money last week. I think it was about 39k. Maddo's down to 719k, and people were talking about him as a buy when he's closer to 800k. So yeah, Maddo is an absolute weapon. The complicated part here is that Maddo was playing the halves last week. He had about 20 tackles, which is much below his standard work rate, but he had, I think it was 5 tackle breaks and about 160 meters run. So his score is 44 without any real attacking upside in it. It was in a game where the Eels did plenty of attacking and scored plenty of points against Manly. But he's probably not going to be that big attacking stat half when he fills in for Moses. So, look, I'm filming this before State of Origin, which is a big caveat here. If Moses has a rough game in Origin and doesn't back up Parramatta, I think it's a 4-day turnaround, then Madison will play in the halves again for round 17. He'll miss round 18 with a bye. He will play in the halves round 19, covering for Moses again because of Origin. And then round 20 will be his first game in the back row. So as a half scorer, he's not going to score. He just doesn't kick enough. So he's not going to score as well as he would in the forward pack. There's a good chance that Moses backs up this week because Parramatta are coming 8th. But there is a world where Maddo doesn't play in the forwards until round 20. So yeah, 719k. Again, he's probably a guy, he'll bounce back before you want to buy him. That's my feel on it. But I think he'll dip down into the 600s and he'll bounce back up to maybe 700. And that's where you have to buy him at the end of the Origin period. So, yeah, another cut price keeper here, which is crazy. Next one here is Eli Katoa. Look, a lot of people bought him. I'm one who has suffered through that. And we got a HIA, well, not technically a HIA, an eye injury where he didn't come back to the field and played 5 minutes or something. And then we've had the week off. He'll be back next week. And this week it's also a week off. He'll be back next week. Look, Eli Katoa, because he's such good value at 542k, you might hold on to him. You're probably not going to buy him. I mean, if you played around 18 and looks pretty good, dropped a bit more money, you finish round 19, he doesn't play around 19. You get to round 20, you might look at buying him for that low 500s sort of price tag. Yeah, bit of a depth piece. It depends how you trade, depending on you probably can't do it. You probably don't want to go like that. But if you were desperate and you were planning to run your trades down, you wanted a depth guy who could score pretty well most of the time, Katoa was pretty good. DC is the next one here, 767k. Look, he's a big discount right now, just nearly 100k off his starting price for the year. He started the year with a 90-point game as well. So I remember when all the rage was, do we trade Cleary to DCE? Right now, he's a bit of a forgotten man. Manly's buys aren't bad or anything like that. Like, look, 767k. He carries an 85 break-even into this week. So for me, it's a wait and see. It's a watch. There are a lot of smart coaches who are talking about buying him this week as well. Look, you could do it. He could probably produce some scores for you. For mine, I'm not desperate for a half in that sort of caliber. DC isn't part of my plans, but he's a pretty juicy pod if you do want to grab him. And let's see how he goes in Origin as well. Like, let's see if he's going to back up. Manly need him to back up, though. They need him to back up. They need probably Turbo to back up, too, because they are sliding out of the 8 fast. And look, DC could be that guy that saves them. So, yeah, 767k. Let's say you wait and see. You wait a few weeks. You get him after Origin for 720k. Again, the value is off the charts. Last guy here is frustrating. If you took him in draft or something like that, you are hating life. Look, Gus Crichton, he's 509k. He's been a top 10 fantasy player in the past. That's what I want to say. That's basically the only reason why he's on this list. He's got that pedigree, that history of being a top 10 player. He's capable of being a top 10 player, but he's just so out of favor at the Roosters. Trent Robinson has no love for him. Look, Nat Butcher got dropped to the bench. And what did they do? They didn't bring Gus Crichton in. They brought Tupanua and Egan Butcher into the starting side. Now, look, as a pure spectator, Maybe not on recent form, but I would argue that Nat Butcher and Angus Crichton are far, far better back rowers than the other two they've got starting there. And the other two are pretty solid. Look, Butcher and Tupanua, not bad players, but yeah, Gus Crichton's top flight. And the moment he gets that starting job, he's 300k undervalued. It's that easy. Next group is the cash cows. These guys are pretty tricky this week. All right, I'm going to throw some curveballs at you with these guys because there's nothing clean here. There were some clean options a few weeks ago. If you didn't get on those, then sorry, but you got some tricky ones now. The first one here is Val Tavare. 312k. He's kind of been sitting behind Branko Lee in the depth chart, which is very frustrating because I think he's pretty significantly better than Branko Lee as a player. 312k is really nice. It's a nice price you can get him for. Branko Lee's out indefinitely with a leg injury, which it could mean anything. There's talk of Branko Lee exiting early to go to the Super League. There's a lot of things here. I think there's enough noise that I would be willing to take the gamble on Valence Tavare. Look, if Branko Lee comes back and stays fit for the rest of the year, then you just got really unlucky there. You got really unlucky. But I think there's enough here in this for us that you don't want to be waiting on this because Val has been pretty good. He's had a really big game when he first debuted, and he had a 34-point game against Manly when Manly absolutely destroyed the Dolphins. So that 34 via center, it's not bad. It's not bad. When the Dolphins get back to a bit of form, I like him as a fantasy scorer. Next guy here, Brendan Pecura. So he's on the Broncos. So the thing to note here is that Kurt Capewell is out till round 20. He's got an injury. I think it's a quad injury there. Pecura is pretty highly touted as a talent at the Broncos, which is a plus. He'll probably get pretty big minutes, which is another plus. There's not a lot of threats, for the edge back row at the Broncos. My minus here is that he's not a great fantasy scorer historically. So he kind of relies on those big plays. I guess he's a bit like Jordan Ricky a couple of years ago. He relies on those big plays. Look, there are plenty of those at the Broncos, but for a bit of a rental, he doesn't play round 19. So you get 2 weeks of him, then you have a bye, then you have Kurt Capewell back. The price is nice, but everything else is not. So I'm going to be skipping that. But there's also a world where he finds a way to keep a spot, and he's a pretty good option through the rest of the year. So, yeah, look, too much risk for me. Not enough upside baked into it, but do what you're going to do. Next guy here, Cleese Haas. And Haas is one that Paulie on NRL.com actually was talking about a bit offline. Look, Haas, I'm a little shy on Haas. He's had a couple of 80-minute games. He had that 58-point game, which was fantastic. And he had a 30-point game. Now, in both the games where he's played 80 minutes starting in the back row, he's averaged he scored between, I think it's 43 and 51 meters per game. So not a great attacking work rate. Not a great attacking work rate, especially in a Titans team that is happy to feed the ball to edge back rowers. He had that try, which boosted up his score, and he's got a decent defensive work rate, about 30 tackles a game. I'm not that excited about him, but if he did get a starting spot, I might have bought him. And look, he's not named to start. Joe Simpson's in that starting role. There's a chance that changes on game day. That's another one to keep an eye on. Again, none of these are clean, but Haas, if you see that change on game day and you've got the space to make a move, if he's that 80-minute guy for the rest of the year, 298k on a pretty good attacking team, I kind of like it. I'm probably not going to do it. I've got other moves I want to make, but I don't mind it if you need some cover for that spot. Then Finafuiaki at the Cowboys. Look, 241k. This is a bit of a mirage. So the Cowboys have named their entire starting origin group on the extended bench. I think there's about 5 of them between jerseys 20 and 24. For those guys, look, they're going to back up. I mean, like Nanai probably backs up. He probably doesn't play 80 minutes, I'd say, just with the way they rotate things. Actually, maybe he might. Not a lot of edge guys on the bench. We'll see how Queensland do it. I still think Nanai probably backs up. He's had enough time off footy upon having thought about it a bit more. Look, guys like Val Holmes back up. Cotto will back up limited minutes. Robson should back up. Finafuiaki, he's not going to keep that starting spot. And look, he's fantastic. I mean, Lukey is injured as well. So there are some minutes on offer, but he's behind Nanai and Luciano. And they've shown no proclivity to play Funafuaki in the middle either. Great fantasy scorer, though. So if you did ever get that starting role for a decent amount of time, I'm kind of hoping it's next year that it happens, and he just keeps his price nice and low this year. Then he's an instant buy in that situation. But I just don't see it happening unless, look, if Nanai cops an injury in Origin or something like that. No one wants to see that, obviously. Nanai's a great player, but if he were to get knocked around, then Funafuaki becomes an instant buy at 241k. He's the kind of guy who could average in the 40s there for you if you've got a good minutes roll, but he probably won't play 80 at any situation. Jed Cartwright's the last guy here, and look, he hasn't gotten a lot of chances to start in the back row. They've lent towards a lot of other guys. So, Jai Arrow, Jacob Host, Michael Cheekham have all sort of floated through that spot. Jed Cartwright for the Rabbitohs, he gets his chance now. So I'll throw a few things at you. Look, downside, job security is non-existent. Michael Cheekham's on the bench. It's gross. Upside, he's available at center. Upside, he has shown a decent work rate in the past. Upside, he's got relatively decent ability to grab some attacking stats. If he was locked in for a big minutes forward role, and I was confident he would be playing that role for the next month plus of footy, Jed Cartwright's a pretty good buy. For me, though, it's probably, he might even be one of those guys who's in the wait and see column. Where if he has a fantastic game on the weekend, then all right, let's talk about it. But if he just sort of fizzles out a bit and they rotate between him and Cheekham, it's non-factor. Look, he's not scoring well enough historically to bounce up in price anyway, that much. So you can afford to wait and see on that one. But look, of this group, Val Tavares is the far and away best option. There's a couple of other guys to watch for Teamless and watch Origin as well. Hold or sell. So these ones are frustrating. If you own these guys, you're in a weird spot. You're in a weird spot. Con Lemuelu. Look, Connolly is his name, but he's conned all of us this week. 628k. He's been named on the bench. Now, I'm going to throw a few things here. So optimistically is my first sort of lens here. Maybe the Dolphins go, all right, you know what, actually, Lemuelu's been fantastic. He's starting this week. We're going to move Kenny Bromwich to lock. We're going to move Ray Stone to the bench. Maybe that's what happens. But alternatively, maybe he does go back to the bench. It is a big ask. Look, he's a guy who's not historically played consistent minutes in the first grade. So maybe Bennett's looking at that and going, all right, let's give him a bit of a rest. He's been trying to play 80 minutes every week. We can bring him off the bench and he can have a big impact. Now, it's hard when we're playing fantasy to detach ourselves from the fantasy outcome that we want. So when I look at this, I go, oh, no, he's been fantastic. Keep him in 80 minutes. But if you were looking at this from the Dolphins coaching perspective, you might think that in real footy terms, he's better coming off and giving that impact. And the Dolphins did have a bad loss in their last start as well. So maybe that experience on the edges is something they're trying to add. There's a big chance Sean O'Sullivan comes back into the starting side too. It could be anything. Next guy here, Cody Nicarima. That was a great segue accidentally there. Look, 527k. If you bought him, bravo to you. Like, he's done a job for you. It's a massive win. Now, that's where the positives end. And look, Isaiah Katoa is the future at the Dolphins. That's how they see it. And Sean O'Sullivan led the competition in touches per game before his injury. So I just think that they're going to run with that combo long term. Look, Katoa and Nicarima, it's been fun. There isn't really a true 7 in that pairing. Whereas if you throw Sean O'Sullivan in, he's one of the better sort of club level 7s going around. In that he really does take responsibility for the team. He racks up a lot of kick meters. He takes a lot of pressure off the other half, and it allows Katoa to play as more that roaming 6 again. So I think they're going to do that. There's a big chance that if you have Nicarima, he will put in a terrible score for you this week. So either, here's the range of options. One, Sean O'Sullivan doesn't come in from the extended bench and Nicarima keeps starting. I don't think it's likely. I think it's pretty unlikely, but it could happen, depending on Sean O'Sullivan's rehab and all that. Option 2, Hamaso doesn't back up. O'Sullivan comes into half and Nicarima goes to fullback. Option 3, Nicarima moves to the bench to make way for Sean O'Sullivan in the starting spot, and Nicarima scores terribly. Now, if Sean O'Sullivan is fit, that's what I expect to happen. So I would be selling Nick Green if I had him. But again, if back to talent, you're back to talent. It's totally up to you. Kalo Apu, he flopped with 13 points last week, and it was depressing. Yeah, look, I had Matt Burton, who got called into the 18th man spot last minute, so I had to start Oluwapu last week, and yeah, that was trash. That was trash. I mean, look, his price rises are pretty stunted now. He misses this week as well for the Dogs bye. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth selling him. You're either kind of holding him for the reasonably long term, or you're selling him now. It's pretty uninspiring. I might sell him just because I have to, because I've got a few like Tigers, Bulldogs, Sharks are all on bye this week, and you got Nico Hines. Like you might have a Simpkin, for example. You might have Preston, Burton. Like there's a lot of guys you could potentially have. Isaiah Papali'i, John Bateman. You need to only have 4 from those teams, and Oluwapu is the one that I'm probably not that keen to hold on to. So I'll probably be selling him, but if you hold on for the long term, it could be good. Jake Simpkins, the next guy. Look, he scored 52 points in 48 minutes, I believe it was. That's fantastic and the worst at the same time. So I've heard a few different theories floating around on this. Simpkin, his PPM is great. We can lock that in, right? That's awesome. He's got a bit of attacking upside as well. He sort of scoots out of dummy half. He's a bit schemy. I kind of like him as a player. He raised a lot of money too, which is nice. That makes me like him more. The theory I've heard is that look, they brought De Silva on for Simpkin in a bit in the middle of the game, and they brought Simpkin back on. Did they then bring De Silva back on for a second time because the game was a bit out of touch and they wanted that spark, or because it was his debut and his family was there? Or you can never really tell with the Tigers like what their rationale is. I don't expect they're going to use 3 subs on hooker every week. I don't think they're going to do that. I think it could be Simpkin playing bigger minutes and De Silva either coming on to spell him through the middle of the game or coming on for the last 20-25 minutes. So I think for Simpkin, if you have Simpkin, look, 276K, it's not a lot of money. It's a very low break even. He's probably a guy I'm going to try and prioritize holding. And you probably bought him pretty recently too, so you'd feel silly selling him now. So hang on to Simpkin. Look, the points upside's there. He's a juicy option. Zach Hoskins, the last one. Easy sell. You got to move him. So let me know in the comments who you're trading this week and who your captain is. Are you captaining Nico Hines this week? Jack DeBellin, Payne Haas? You're going to go crazy with someone like DCE or Dave Fafita? Let me know in the comments who you're going to captain there, and I'll see you on the next one. Good luck this week.